Professor Vex-9 clicked his mandibles in barely contained amusement as he surveyed the Galactic Military Academy's most elite class. Today was Weapons Demonstration Day, and the cream of the galaxy's warrior species had assembled their finest instruments of destruction. The Krillian prince had brought his plasma scythes. The Valdorian twins displayed their neural disruptors with obvious pride. Even the usually modest Centaurian delegate had wheeled in a portable mass accelerator that could punch holes through battleship hulls. And then there was the human. Captain Mira Voss sat at the back of the amphitheater, arms crossed, wearing that infuriating smirk that seemed permanently etched onto human faces. Empty-handed, naturally, because why would a species that had clawed its way up from a backwater planet bring anything of value to the most prestigious weapons course in known space? Well now, Professor Vex-9's voice dripped with theatrical sarcasm, I see our human representative has once again graced us with her minimalist approach to preparation. The class erupted in chittering laughs and bellowing guffaws. Tell me, Captain Voss, did your species perhaps forget that today was Weapons Demonstration Day? Or is this another example of human improvisation we keep hearing about? Mira's grin widened. Oh, I brought weapons, Professor. 2 of them, actually. Really? The Krillian prince, Zektor, twisted his serpentine neck to get a better look. I don't see any weapons. Did you shrink them down with some primitive human technology? Nope. Mira stood up slowly, and something in her casual movement made the laughter die down. I brought these. She raised both hands, wiggling her fingers. My hands. The silence that followed was so complete, you could have heard a plasma cell discharge. Then the laughter started again, louder this time, mixed with sounds of genuine disbelief from species who communicated through sonic booms and electromagnetic pulses. Your hands? Professor Vex-9's compound eyes bulged slightly. Captain Voss, while I appreciate your species' legendary sense of humor, this is a serious academic exercise. We are discussing weapons capable of ending conflicts between star systems, not appendages for grasping food. Are we now? Mira's voice carried that dangerous edge that made smart beings take a step back. But this class was composed of the galaxy's finest warriors, not smart beings. Because I was under the impression we were discussing the most effective weapons in the universe. And trust me, Professor, nothing in this room comes close to what a human can do with just these 10 fingers. Lokvar, a massive Urdonian whose species had conquered 17 systems through brute force alone, slammed his 6-fisted hands on his desk. This is insulting. I brought a gravity hammer that can collapse molecular structures, and she brings skin and bone? Skin, bone, muscle, neural pathways, and about 4 billion years of evolutionary refinement, Mira corrected cheerfully. Plus, a really bad attitude when people underestimate them. The Valdorian twins exchanged a look that needed no translation. Human, the first one spoke. Our neural disruptors can shut down the nervous system of any known species in 0.3 seconds. What can your hands possibly do? Mira tilted her head, considering. Well, Rix Alpha, since you asked so nicely, they can do this. What happened next would be analyzed by military strategists for the next 3 centuries. Mira's movement was so fast that most of the class didn't even see her leave her seat. One moment she was standing at the back of the amphitheater, the next she was beside Rix Alpha's desk. The Valdorian's neural disruptor, a sleek weapon that had taken 50 years to perfect, was suddenly in Mira's hand. Not because she'd grabbed it, but because she'd somehow convinced Rix Alpha's own nervous system to hand it over. Pressure point manipulation, Mira explained conversationally as Rix Alpha stared at his own treacherous appendage. Humans figured out a long time ago that every species with a nervous system has specific points where the right amount of pressure in the right direction can make your body do whatever we want it to do. She pressed a finger to a spot on Rix Alpha's neck, and the Valdorian immediately sat down heavily, looking dazed. Like that. The class was dead silent now. Even Professor Vex 9 had stopped clicking his mandibles. Now, Mira continued, examining the neural disruptor with professional interest. This is a nice piece of tech. Expensive, I bet. Probably took your whole planet's defense budget to develop. She looked up at the class with innocent eyes. Want to see what human hands can do to expensive technology? Before anyone could respond, her fingers moved across the weapon's surface in a blur of precise motion. There was a soft series of clicks, a brief hum, and then silence. Mira held up the neural disruptor again, except now it was in 7 distinct pieces. Disassembly, she announced. Every piece of technology has joints, seams, connection points. Human fingers are precise enough to find them and strong enough to exploit them. We've been taking apart things that don't want to be taken apart for millennia. She let the pieces fall to the floor with a series of metallic clinks. Comes in handy during combat situations. Lokvar rose to his full 3-meter height, all 6 arms reaching for his gravity hammer. Enough of this demonstration. Let's see your precious hands deal with... He never finished the sentence. Mira had moved again, and suddenly Lokvar was lying on the floor, his gravity hammer rolling away across the amphitheater. The massive Erdonian wasn't unconscious, just completely unable to move, staring up at the ceiling with wide eyes. Nerve clusters, Mira explained to the class, as if she'd just demonstrated how to fold laundry. Erdonians have 3 major neural nexuses along their spinal column. Press all 3 in the right sequence, she demonstrated on empty air. And you get temporary paralysis without permanent damage. Very humane, really. She walked back toward the front of the class, stepping over Lokvar with casual indifference. The thing about human hands is that they're not just weapons. They're multi-tool weapons. We can use them for precision strikes, like I just showed you. We can use them for demolition work. She gestured to the scattered pieces of the neural disruptor. We can use them for restraint and control. She nodded toward the still paralyzed Lokvar. And if we really need to... Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the amphitheater. We can use them to kill. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Professor Vex 9 felt his survival instincts, honed by evolution on a planet where everything tried to eat everything else, start screaming warnings. Now, I know what you're all thinking, Mira continued, her cheerful tone completely at odds with the predatory stillness that had settled over her. You're thinking, but Captain Voss, surely your hands can't compete with our advanced weaponry. Surely our superior technology gives us an advantage. She picked up a stylus from Professor Vex 9's desk, a simple writing implement made of standard durasteel. The thing is, when you've spent your entire evolutionary history learning to kill things with nothing but your hands, you get really good at improvising. This stylus, for instance. She held it up. In the hands of a Valdorian, it's a writing tool. In the hands of a Krillian, it's still a writing tool. In human hands. She made a casual flicking motion with her wrist. The stylus flew across the room with the velocity of a bullet, embedding itself 3 inches deep in the reinforced polymer wall at the back of the amphitheater. It's a projectile weapon with a muzzle velocity of approximately 400 meters per second, Mira finished. And that was just using my wrist. If I'd used my whole arm. She didn't need to finish the sentence. The class was staring at the stylus protruding from the wall, then back at Mira, then at their own weapons, which suddenly seemed much less impressive. Prince Zektor, who had been conspicuously silent since the demonstration began, finally found his voice. This is impossible. No biological weapon system can compete with advanced technology. The physics alone. The physics work just fine, Mira interrupted. You're just thinking about it wrong. You see weapons as tools that you use to project force. Humans are weapons that happen to use tools to project even more force. She flexed her fingers, and several students unconsciously leaned away from the movement. We don't just carry weapons. We are weapons. Professor Vex 9 realized his mouth was hanging open and snapped it shut with an audible click. Captain Voss, he managed, while your demonstration has been illuminating, surely you cannot expect us to believe that human hands alone constitute a significant military advantage. Mira's smile turned sharp. Professor, my species conquered our entire planet, using nothing but these hands and whatever rocks we could pick up. Then we conquered our solar system. Then we started working on the galaxy. She held up one finger. Want to know the secret to human success in warfare? The class leaned forward despite themselves. We don't fight fair. Mira's voice was conversational, almost friendly. Every other species in the galaxy develops honorable combat doctrines, standardized weapons, rules of engagement, codes of conduct. She shook her head in mock sympathy. Humans, we fight to win. And when you fight to win, your hands become the most versatile weapons platform in the known universe. She walked over to the Krillian prince's plasma scythes, beautiful weapons that glowed with contained energy. These are gorgeous, by the way. Probably cost more than my entire year's salary. Very effective against enemies who fight standing up. Without warning, she dropped to the floor in a movement so fluid it looked like water flowing downhill. Less effective against enemies who don't. From her position on the ground, she reached up and touched a point on Zektor's leg. The prince immediately toppled over, his plasma scythes clattering uselessly to the floor as he found himself unable to maintain his balance. Low attacks, Mira explained, popping back to her feet with the same fluid grace. Every species in the galaxy designs their combat styles around fighting opponents of similar size and stance. Humans learn to fight everything from insects to megafauna. We attack from every angle, every position, every direction that works. She helped Zektor back to his feet with casual courtesy. Makes us very unpredictable in combat. The prince stared at her with something approaching awe. How did you know where to strike? Krillian anatomy is classified information. Observation. Mira tapped her temple. Humans are really good at pattern recognition. I watched you move for 30 seconds and figured out how your muscular system works. Every species has the same basic requirements: balance, joint flexibility, neural pathways. Once you understand the engineering, she shrugged. The rest is just applied anatomy. A new voice spoke up from the middle of the class. Captain, if human hands are so effective, why do your people use technology at all? Mira turned to face the speaker, a insectoid Thex warrior named Clix 9. Because we're not stupid, Clix. Technology is a force multiplier. These hands, she held them up again, can kill one enemy very efficiently. These hands holding a kinetic rifle can kill 50 enemies very efficiently. These hands operating a starship weapon system can kill entire fleets very efficiently. Her smile turned predatory. But the key word there is operating. Technology doesn't fight wars. Hands fight wars. Technology just makes the hands more effective. Professor Vex-9 felt compelled to interrupt. Captain, while your points are thought-provoking, surely you're not suggesting that primitive biological weapons are superior to advanced military technology? Not at all, Professor. Mira's voice was perfectly reasonable. I'm suggesting that the most advanced military technology in the galaxy is useless without the right biological interface to operate it. And humans, she wiggled her fingers again, have the best biological interface ever evolved. She walked over to the Centaurian's mass accelerator, a weapon system so advanced it required 3 separate targeting computers to operate effectively. May I? The Centaurian, a being named Flux 7, nodded nervously. Mira's hands moved over the control surface with impossible precision, fingers dancing across controls that required perfect timing and spatial coordination. The targeting system, which normally took several minutes to align properly, locked onto 3 separate targets in under 10 seconds. Dexterity, Mira announced. 27 independent joints per hand, controlled by a nervous system that evolved to swing through trees while keeping track of predators, prey, and social dynamics simultaneously. The mass accelerator's targeting display showed perfect locks on 3 different points around the amphitheater. Most species can operate technology. Humans can make technology dance. She stepped away from the weapon system, and it immediately lost target lock as its automatic systems tried to compensate for the sudden absence of human precision. The real question, Mira continued, isn't whether human hands are better than your weapons. The question is whether your weapons would be better if they were designed by humans, built by humans, and operated by humans. The silence that followed was broken by a slow, deliberate clap from the back of the amphitheater. Everyone turned to see Admiral Keth Tor, the Academy's commandant, standing in the entrance. The ancient warrior's 4 arms were moving in the Krillian gesture of profound respect. An exemplary demonstration, Captain Voss, the Admiral rumbled, though I suspect you're not finished yet. Mira's grin widened. Not even close, sir. I was just getting warmed up. Admiral Keth Tor's eyes glittered with something that might have been anticipation. Then perhaps you'd be willing to expand on your thesis? I believe the class would benefit from understanding exactly why the Galactic Council considers humanity's admission to the Academy to be such a significant development. Oh, I'd be happy to explain that, Mira said, and something in her voice made every survival instinct in the room start screaming warnings. But I think it would be better if I showed them instead. She looked around the amphitheater at the assembled representatives of the galaxy's greatest warrior species, all of them now staring at her with a mixture of fascination and growing unease. After all, she added, cracking her knuckles with a sound like breaking bones, the best way to understand human weapons technology is to experience it firsthand. The amphitheater fell so silent that the only sound was the soft hum of the life support systems and the very faint whimpering of someone who had just realized they were about to become a teaching aid. Admiral Keth Tor's presence changed the entire dynamic of the room. The ancient Krillian had fought in 17 major conflicts, survived 3 assassination attempts, and once held off an entire Valdorian battle fleet with nothing but a damaged cruiser and sheer bloody-minded determination. When he spoke, the galaxy listened. Captain Voss, he said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority, perhaps you could demonstrate the practical applications of human combat methodology in a more comprehensive manner. Mira's eyes lit up like a child who'd just been told Christmas was coming early. You want me to take on the entire class, sir? I want you to show them why every intelligence agency in the galaxy now has a file marked Human Threat Assessment sitting on their commander's desk, Admiral Kethtor replied. Consider this an advanced tactical exercise. Professor Vex 9's mandibles clicked frantically. Admiral, surely you cannot be serious. Captain Voss is outnumbered 23-1. The liability issues alone— Professor. The Admiral's voice cut through the protests like a plasma torch through tissue paper. Did you not just witness this human disable 4 of your best students using nothing but manual manipulation? Do you honestly believe numbers are going to be a significant factor here? The class exchanged nervous glances. What had started as an amusing demonstration was rapidly evolving into something that resembled a survival scenario. Several students were eyeing the exits, though none were foolish enough to actually move toward them. Mira stretched her arms above her head, joints popping with sounds like small explosions. All right then. New rules, everyone. This is now a practical exercise in asymmetric warfare. Your objective is simple. Incapacitate me using whatever means necessary. My objective. Her smile turned absolutely feral. Is to show you why humans don't just survive in a hostile galaxy. We thrive in it. She walked to the center of the amphitheater, her movements loose and relaxed. Oh, and one more thing. You have about 30 seconds to figure out your strategy before I start hunting you. The word hunting sent a collective shiver through the assembled warriors. There was something in the way Mira said it that suggested she wasn't speaking metaphorically. Clix 9, the Thex warrior, was the first to recover his composure. Class, form defensive positions. Use your ranged weapons to maintain distance. Do not allow the human to— He never finished the sentence. Mira had moved during his speech, not toward him, but toward the amphitheater's lighting controls. Her fingers danced across the panel, and suddenly the room plunged into near darkness, illuminated only by the soft glow of various weapon displays. Environmental manipulation. Her voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Rule number 1 of human warfare. Always control the battlefield before you control the enemy. Plasma fire erupted from 3 different directions as the alien students tried to target her voice. The brilliant flashes of energy lit up the amphitheater like strobe lights, creating a chaotic dance of light and shadow that made accurate targeting impossible. Rule number 2, Mira's voice came from a completely different location now. Never let the enemy predict your position. A Erdonian warrior named Grek 5 suddenly found himself lifted off his feet and thrown into 2 of his classmates. None of them had seen Mira approach, and none of them saw her leave. She was simply there, applying exactly the right amount of force in exactly the right direction. And then she was gone again. Stealth tactics, Admiral Kethtor murmured to Professor Vex 9, who was recording everything with multiple sensors. Humans evolved as persistence hunters, but they also developed ambush predator capabilities. Remarkable adaptation. In the darkened amphitheater, chaos was spreading like wildfire. The alien students were trained in conventional warfare, battle lines and coordinated attacks, honor codes and predictable engagement patterns. Mira was fighting like humanity had always fought, with creativity, unpredictability, and absolute ruthlessness. A Centaurian tried to activate his portable shield generator, only to discover that someone had somehow rewired it while he wasn't looking. Instead of projecting a defensive barrier, it began playing what sounded like ancient Terran music at maximum volume. Sabotage! Mira's voice explained cheerfully over the din. While you were all watching my hands, you forgot that human fingers are also excellent at subtle electronic warfare. Prince Zektor attempted to coordinate a group attack, gathering 5 other students in a defensive circle. It was a textbook formation that should have provided mutual protection and overlapping fields of fire. Instead, they found themselves tangled together as their own weapons somehow became entangled in each other's equipment. Psychological warfare, Mira continued her running commentary. Humans learned long ago that the best way to defeat a superior enemy is to make them defeat themselves. The lights suddenly came back on, revealing a scene that would have been hilarious if it wasn't so thoroughly terrifying. Half the class was unconscious, the other half was trapped under their own equipment, and several students were sitting perfectly still, with expressions of absolute confusion on their faces. Mira stood in the exact center of the amphitheater, not even breathing hard. "And that," she announced, "is why human hands are the most dangerous weapons in the galaxy." Admiral Kethtor began a slow, measured applause. "Outstanding demonstration, Captain. Though I notice you refrained from any potentially lethal techniques." "Of course, sir. These are my classmates, not enemy combatants." Mira's tone suggested this was an important distinction. If this had been an actual combat situation. She left the sentence hanging, but her implication was crystal clear. Professor Vex-9 was staring at his instruments in disbelief. "Captain, according to my measurements, you incapacitated 23 opponents in under 4 minutes, using nothing but environmental manipulation, improvised tactics, and precise application of force. How is this possible?" Mira shrugged, helping Lokvar back to his feet with the same casual courtesy she'd shown throughout the demonstration. "Practice, mostly. Humans have been fighting outnumbered battles since before we developed written language. We got good at it. But the coordination, the tactical awareness, the precise timing." Flux 7 was examining his sabotaged equipment with professional curiosity rather than anger. These require processing capabilities far beyond normal biological parameters. Actually, they require exactly normal human biological parameters, Mira corrected. "See? Here's what you need to understand about human hands." She held them up again, wiggling her fingers. "They're not just manipulative appendages connected to a standard nervous system. They're the endpoints of the most sophisticated biological weapons system ever evolved." She tapped her temple with one finger. "Human brains developed specifically to coordinate complex hand movements while tracking multiple variables simultaneously. Spatial reasoning, trajectory calculation, force vector analysis, all processed in real time while maintaining awareness of environmental factors and enemy positions." Her smile was almost apologetic. "We call it hand-eye coordination, but what it really is a targeting computer that makes your best military hardware look like an abacus." Admiral Kethtor nodded slowly. "And this is why the Galactic Council has classified humanity as a Class 7 military threat, despite your technological limitations." "Oh, we're not technologically limited anymore," Mira said cheerfully. "That was just while we were stuck on one planet. Now that we have access to galactic technology—" She gestured around the amphitheater. "Well, you just saw what happens when you put advanced tools in human hands." Clix-9, who was still untangling himself from his own equipment, looked up with something approaching awe. "Captain, if human combat capabilities are so advanced, why did your species agree to attend the Academy? What could we possibly teach you?" Mira's expression became suddenly serious. "How to hold back," she said quietly. how to use proportional force, how to fight wars without completely annihilating the enemy. She looked around at the confused faces of her classmates. See, the thing about human hands is that they're really good at killing things. Almost too good. We spent most of our history learning better and better ways to kill each other until we got so efficient at it that we almost wiped ourselves out. The amphitheater fell silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. Thoughtful rather than terrified. The Academy teaches restraint, Admiral Keth-Tor said approvingly. Control. The ability to achieve objectives without excessive destruction. Exactly. Mira's smile returned, but it was gentler now. Any idiot with hands can kill. It takes real skill to subdue, disable, and control without causing permanent damage. That's what I was demonstrating today. Calculated force application for non-lethal outcomes. Professor Vex-9 was still processing the implications. Captain, if what you've shown us today represents restrained human combat capability, what would unrestrained capability look like? Mira's expression became unreadable. Professor, with all due respect, that's not something you want to know. That's not something anyone wants to know. She flexed her fingers one more time, and somehow the simple movement seemed loaded with infinite potential for destruction. Let's just say that humans joined the galactic community because we decided we'd rather be part of civilization than the thing that ends it. Admiral Keth-Tor stepped forward, his forearms spread in a gesture of formal recognition. Class dismissed. Captain Voss, if you would remain for a moment, there are some advanced tactical scenarios I believe you'd find interesting. As the stunned students filed out of the amphitheater, many of them still looking back at Mira with mixture of respect and carefully concealed terror, Professor Vex-9 gathered his equipment and muttered to himself in his native language. Admiral Keth-Tor's translator helpfully provided the meaning. Note to self, recommend immediate upgrade to Academy security protocols. Also, send requisition for reinforced training facilities. Also, update emergency medical supplies inventory. Also, consider early retirement. Mira laughed, a sound like silver bells mixed with warning sirens. Professor, you don't need to worry about security protocols. As long as you keep treating humans like partners instead of threats, you'll never see what my people are really capable of. She held up her hands one final time, 10 fingers that had just redefined every tactical doctrine in the galaxy. After all, these weapons work best when they're extended in friendship rather than clenched in anger. The amphitheater's lights dimmed as the demonstration officially ended, but the implications of what had just occurred would ripple through galactic military doctrine for generations to come. In archives across the galaxy, threat assessment files were updated, training protocols were revised, and a single notation was added to humanity's official classification. Recommended approach: diplomatic cooperation strongly advised. Alternative approaches not recommended for beings interested in continued existence. And in the quiet aftermath, Mira Voss smiled and cracked her knuckles, already looking forward to tomorrow's lesson on advanced psychological warfare techniques. After all, she still had so much to teach the galaxy about what humans could do with just their hands. The only sound in the empty amphitheater was Admiral Keth-Tor's quiet laughter and the soft whisper of air through the ventilation systems, carrying with it the faint but unmistakable scent of fear, respect, and the dawn of a new era in galactic military science.